Today I'm going to take you guys for a little hike in Hillary's open space in Tiburon as we talk about how McDonald's and really a lot of other fast food restaurants are crashing right now. But in all reality, it's not just fast food. It's any customer-facing business that caters to lower and middle income people. Because these restaurants have catered to this type of customer for quite some time. And the issue is now a lot of their customers are being squeezed so much by inflation and the increased cost of living, and they just can't continue going to these places. And then when you combine that situation with the fact that companies like McDonald's have increased prices to the point where it just makes no sense to go there anymore, it's no wonder that their sales are plummeting right now. Right now, it is becoming normal for the value menu at McDonald's to have items that are $10. And what happened to the dollar menu, guys? And if you're bringing a family of 4 to McDonald's and you're spending $40, $50, or $60 on food, you might as well go to a casual sit-down place like a diner or something and get a real home-cooked meal. The price of food away from home has been going up substantially since 2020. Take a look at these inflation numbers going back to 2020. Food away from home in 2020 was 3.4%. In 2021, 3.9%, 7.7% in 2022, 2023 was at 5.8%, 2024 is at 4.1%, and as of the most recent reading that we just got, it's still at 3.7%. And remember, these are all phony numbers calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. These numbers are not a great reflection of reality of what people really pay in real life. They're just estimates based on highly manipulated data that the government wants you to see. And so this is leading to a situation for McDonald's where foot traffic has declined 3.5% in the third quarter of 2025. And remember, guys, McDonald's has been having problems now for the past couple of years. I have covered numerous stories on this channel about how McDonald's is seeing their customers disappear, and that trend is continuing. They thought when they introduced the $5 meal deal again back in June of last year that was going to solve all their problems, and it's not. It's not bringing people back to the point that they need in order to keep growing. And here's the thing, when you dig into the actual data of what's going on with a company like McDonald's, it gets even more concerning than that. Because if it wasn't for all the new stores that have opened, it would actually make these numbers look even worse. Because if you take away the new stores that were opened, the foot traffic actually went down 4% in just one quarter. That is pretty significant. And one thing we've noticed over the course of 2025, things have been getting progressively worse pretty fast when it comes to consumer spending patterns and how much people are tightening up the belt with spending. You know, we just talked about yesterday how because of the SNAP benefits drying up, that a lot of these grocery stores could be facing going out of business because of how reliant they are on their low-income customers. And McDonald's is no different. Here's what Placer.ai has to say about this. They say the quick service category is under pressure from multiple fronts: persistent inflation, shifting consumer behavior, value menu fatigue, and even the growing adoption of GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, for example, which are dampening demand for food consumed away from home. So really, it's kind of the perfect storm for these businesses that traditionally had very cheap, unhealthy food that now have expensive, unhealthy food for people to walk away from them. And because McDonald's relies mainly on one demographic for most of their sales, now that this demographic doesn't have the extra budget to spend, McDonald's is kind of in an impossible situation. Like if you are running McDonald's right now, how do you bring people back in? Well, obviously it's a price game. You have to offer value. People want to see the dollar menu back. But if you're McDonald's and you can't make a profit selling anything for $1 anymore, what are you going to do? Are you going to lose money on every single sale? Or do you just accept the fact that business just isn't going to be as good as it used to be and keep prices the same? As a corporation, that's kind of a death sentence because by law, they have legal obligations to try to continue making more money for their shareholders. McDonald's CEO says that they're seeing slower sales due to declining inflation-adjusted income and worsening consumer sentiment, likely because of unease over tariffs and rising unemployment. And it's like, yeah, check, check, check. All that stuff is a concern. And their numbers have been getting worse for a long time, because going back to summer of 2024, McDonald's saw a 4.4% drop in same-store visits back in September 2024. And then in July of this year, it was negative 1.8%. In August, it was negative 4.4%, and negative 4.4% in September as well. The last time McDonald's had positive foot traffic month over month was back in April of 2025. It's almost November, guys. So McDonald's really is crashing. That is not an overstatement. That is not an exaggeration. This is what's happening right now. And like I said, it's an industry-wide fast food problem. It's not just McDonald's. Wendy's is actually doing even worse, for example. Their foot traffic is down 6.5% in the third quarter of this year. Burger King's also down 3.5%. Jack in the Box is down a whopping 7.7%. So don't be surprised if you start seeing a lot of these fast food restaurants start closing up shop, because most of them are all independently owned and operated by franchisees. And these guys are in business to make a profit. And if they can't make a profit, they're not going to be sticking around for very much longer, just like the grocery stores that can't make a profit without SNAP benefits. Supposedly McDonald's has also brought back their Monopoly game. I don't know, I haven't gone there, but they said as of October 6th, they brought back the Monopoly game, and they're also trying to encourage all of their franchise owners to adopt national pricing, which is obviously a huge challenge depending on where you're at, right? If you own a McDonald's here in California and you're forced to pay your employees $20 an hour, but in Iowa, they can get away with paying them $12 an hour, well, it's a lot easier for the Iowa franchise owner to adopt national pricing than the California McDonald's owner. And just like many other things, I don't see this situation getting any better, guys. I think you're just going to see a lot of McDonald's, a lot of Wendy's, a lot of Burger Kings just fold up shop, because there's no more money to be made. Until things turn around in this economy, which could be years from now, these businesses aren't going to be able to survive that long. So companies have to do whatever they need to do in order to survive in environments like this. And UPS is kind of the perfect example of this, because UPS has started replacing more and more of their employee drivers with gig drivers. UPS is now utilizing more gig drivers in their own personal vehicles to handle smaller, lower value deliveries instead of its big, iconic brown trucks. Why are they doing this? Well, the goal is to cut costs as the company faces declining profit margins. And this is following up to the 34,000 buyouts and layoffs of the full-time drivers and warehouse workers that they've gotten rid of. And they've gotten rid of a total of 48,000 employees since the beginning of 2025. And with the prevalence of online shopping, people will buy, a $3 item and get it delivered. Guys, I'm guilty of it. I've done it. I'm sure a lot of people who watch this channel have done it too. And the thing about that is now most deliveries are business to consumer deliveries that are smaller and lighter and less profitable for the company making the delivery. For example, look how much UPS's profit margins have gone down in just the past 10 years, okay? Their domestic operating margin has fallen to 6.4%, down from 14.2% a decade ago. That is a massive loss. FedEx has also seen a similar drop to 6%, also about half of what it earned 10 years ago. And the real irony of this is you would think that more people shopping online and these deliveries that you see every single day, a UPS truck or an Amazon truck or a FedEx truck on your street delivering a package to somebody, you would think that would be great for business and that these companies would be thriving, but it's actually the opposite. So UPS has been very tight this year. They have saved $2.2 billion this year alone through layoffs, buyouts, and facility closures. And the company closed 93 buildings, and it's reducing deliveries for Amazon, which is also a low margin game. And of course, UPS especially is trying to push out their union drivers who are paid $45 an hour for lower paid younger workers who are only earning $23 an hour. Like, this is the state of the job market, guys. Just think about that. People who've been working at UPS a long time making $45 an hour, maybe even more in some cases, which is not bad. And those people have been making that money long before inflation was a real problem, right? But nowadays, if you want to make a good living working at UPS, that opportunity is gone. You're making 23 bucks an hour, which might have been okay before the pandemic, but now, after inflation has wreaked havoc, it's not. There's no real opportunity there. It's a dead-end job. You're not going to be able to make enough to really get ahead in life. And the smart long-time drivers with UPS are taking the buyouts and they're leaving. They talked to one guy who's been working there for 34 years and he's retiring early and taking the buyout. And he also has said that the job has become a lot more demanding and stressful with increased stops per day, going from 60 stops a day about 10 years ago to 120 stops a day. You're talking double stops. So they want you to do twice the amount of work as a UPS driver for half the amount of pay. Go figure. And these companies have kind of reached the maximum amount of stops that they can do per driver. Like one person doing 120 deliveries a day is pretty much where it's at. That's the maximum. You can't really squeeze more than that out of somebody. So they have to pivot towards other things to increase their profitability. Like they're looking at higher margin markets like healthcare, for example, international shipping, and business to business deliveries. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the inevitable collapse of modern day society, because life as we know it has been shifting dramatically over the past 5 years. And a few videos ago I referenced the Great Depression, and one of my viewers, Rainer, he always sends me long detailed emails about the economy, and he brought something to my attention that I want to bring to your attention. When we had the Great Depression, we eventually had a full recovery. As bad as things were during the Great Depression, even though it took a full 25 years or so for the stock market to make a full recovery after the crash in 1929, we eventually did recover. But one thing that Rainer pointed out to me is that people's mindset 100 years ago was completely different than today, which is obviously true. What he explained to me is that prior to World War II, severe downturns with the economy or people's finances in general were a lot more common than they are today. So people were more accustomed to long periods of economic hardship. But fast forward to the 1980s, and really ever since the dollar was taken off the gold standard in 1971, the government, along with the Federal Reserve policies, have created what he likes to call the law against recessions. And this is very prevalent in our society right now when you look at what's going on. They do everything they can to make sure we don't enter an official recession when it comes to calculating the data in a favorable way to make things look better than they are, as well as the economic policies to make sure that people continue to have money and credit even during tough times, which means more inflation and more money printing. And because we have this law against recessions and they do everything they can to prevent one now, well, this has led us to a situation where we've had multiple suppressed major downturns for decades. Look at what they did during COVID. Look at the response that they had. Instead of let things fail and let the economy kind of pull itself up on its own, what did they do? They inject $6 trillion into the economy. Back in 2008, rather than let the big automakers and the banks fail, what did they do? They bailed them out and gave them our money. Private companies that were too big to fail. Whereas you go back 100 years ago, there's no such thing as too big to fail. If you were not a profitable business and you were a bank that went insolvent, you went under. That's just how it was. So people were used to that and they understood the rules of the game. But now we've been trying to play with fake rules of the game for too many years, and it's catching up with us. And basically, we have created now a very weak-minded population that is unaccustomed to serious economic pain. I mean, look at this whole government shutdown, for example, guys. The whole government is shut down because they don't want to renew the subsidies for healthcare, and they're at a standstill because of that. The SNAP benefits are supposed to be expiring November 1st, probably by the time you're watching this video. Millions of people, 42 million people, rely on SNAP benefits. Grocery stores across the country are going to see their sales collapse by more than half overnight because of this. 100 years ago, everybody would just said, well, That's just the way it is. Today, we're like, no, 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 no. We can't let anything like that happen. We have to print as much money as possible or make as much credit available to make sure none of that stuff happen. And then it creates these massive bubbles that lead to the situations that we're in now. But eventually we're going to have to face the music, and there's going to be a major downturn. And it's going to be very shocking to a lot of people who have never experienced anything like this ever before. Just the national debt problem that we have alone is pretty much unsolvable at this point unless we start running massive surpluses, which you know that's not going to happen. And remember, it's not just the United States who's doing this. Pretty much all developed nations across the world have a central bank. They print money as well. They have interest rate policies that manipulate the economy. It's not just us that's doing it, it's everybody. So this is all going to affect the entire global economy all at once. Once one major superpower nation has a massive failure in their economy, it's going to bring down the rest of us pretty quickly. So I'm not claiming I know exactly what's going to happen, but I know Rainer is a lot older than I am and has seen a thing or two more than I have. And I like the fact that a lot of people who watch this channel are quite a bit older than me, because I can learn just as much from you as you guys learn from these videos. And when you look at points of view like this, it really makes sense that this thing can't last forever. Sure, they can try to make it last forever like they're already trying to do right now. You know, the Fed just cut interest rates again by another 25 basis points. But what do you see happening? You see mortgage rates jumped up 20 basis points on the same day as the cut. Okay, who knows how much higher it's going to go after that. But we're kind of coming to a situation where they're not going to be able to continue with these games much longer, because the way the system is built, it's not built to handle this much debt and high interest rates. And if they want to keep investors buying these treasuries, they're going to have to offer serious returns that are enticing enough for people to actually want to buy them. And if they don't, treasury yields are just going to continue to rise no matter how many Fed rate cuts happen. Now, one other thing I want to share, which is also a viewer story that was sent to me, and it has to remain anonymous, but basically she wrote me a story talking about how her 19-year-old son felt pressure to get married just to be able to qualify for financial aid to get a student loan, guys. And if you think this is a poor person's problem, it's not. Because take a look at this. She says, despite her family being in the top 10% of net worth, having around $3 million in net worth and earning $175,000 annually, her and her husband are struggling to finance college education for their 3 children. And that's a lot of children to finance college for, especially at today's prices. She told me that college tuition costs are completely unaffordable, even for families that are considered high earners like themselves. And here's the kicker. Because federal student aid calculations include the income of the parents of the student and their assets, their 19-year-old son was ineligible for student loans. But his school counselor told him that he could only qualify independently if he were 23 years old, homeless, or married. So him and his girlfriend got married at City Hall in order to gain access to financial aid. And a couple months later, her 22-year-old son did the same thing for the same reasons. They even have a running joke in the family that we are the poorest rich people that we know. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of sad. Like, an affluent family that brings in $175K a year cannot afford college education for their 3 children. And these kids are now going to be racking up student loan debt, and you already see the massive problems that people are having with that. And if they don't get good enough jobs to be able to pay it off in a reasonable amount of time, they could be buried in that debt for decades. Now, with parents that are doing well in life, I'm sure they can help expedite paying off those loans. But still, having to resort to drastic measures, getting married at 19 years old just to be able to get a student loan, that is insane. I'm not saying that they're insane for doing this. I'm saying it's insane that it has come to this in order for people to just be able to do something as simple as go to college. And I'm sure other countries that offer free education are just laughing at us, seeing how desperate the situation has become just for people to be able to get a degree. And so I think the main takeaway from all of this is just that everything that used to work normal, used to be normal for people to be able to get something from the dollar menu at McDonald's. It used to be normal for people to be able to just accept the fact that a business can't make it and has to shut down, or banks fail. It used to be normal to be able to go to college and work a summer job and pay your way through that without being buried in debt afterwards or wondering how you're going to pay off your student loan. But everything keeps moving in a worse direction for everybody, even if you're doing well financially right now. So I don't know where all this is going to go, guys, but I think we are inevitably on track for a 1929 style depression all over again, because all of the factors point to it. There are so many similarities from 1929 till now, and we're coming up close to that 100-year anniversary mark. In fact, somebody just wrote a famous book about it called 1929, pointing out an entire book's worth all the similarities between back then and now. It's too many coincidences to say that we're not in for the same thing, if not even worse. The real big difference this time are the extreme measures that our governments are probably going to take and ultimately end up collapsing the value of the dollar because of their decisions. So let me know what you guys think about all this. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.